What's new, 802? I'm Becca Hammond, and you're listening to Vermont Talks. Vermont Talks may include graphic or explicit content. Listener discretion is advised. Today is Saturday, July 8th, and I am lucky enough to be sitting with Alyssa DeBella. Welcome, Alyssa. And you're the owner of the Happy Here and Now studio, and you do watercolor, gouache, and acrylic art. And you run a small business through Etsy, where you're selling art prints, stickers, original works, and cards. And you also have some work at Birds of Vermont Museum, Sparrow Art Supply. You're going to be in the Art Hop this year in the Space Gallery. Is that all part of the same thing, the Art Hop and the Space Gallery? I just want to make sure.
It is, yeah. They participate in that every year, so it's a really great space.
Got it. Very cool. And you've also got some work at 30 Odd on Pine Street.
Yes.
So welcome, Alyssa.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to be here with you today. It's absolutely beautiful out. This is one of the nicest days we've had so far this year, I think, honestly. It's hot, but that's okay. So how long have you been painting, Alyssa?
So I really got into painting in 2021, actually, but I was interested in it when I was younger. So I would say when I was late elementary school, early middle school age, I was really interested in art and painting, but I didn't keep up with it for a while. And then I really got back into it in early 2021, going into 2022, where I was painting every day. I really started exploring watercolors to begin with. So that was something that I started with very basic paints and paper, and just really learned the techniques, and found that right as soon as I started it was just a passion that I didn't know that I had, kind of reignited from when I was younger. And so I spent so much time learning about all of the different painting techniques, trying to take classes as much as I could as well, and just really finding that I was spending so many hours a day painting, and the time would just fly. So I've been painting full time for about, I guess that's a little over 2 years. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So was it kind of a pandemic hobby that turned into?
It was a little bit. It was kind of wanting to find something that was less screen time during the day, I think, and especially at night, especially in the winters when it's dark out at 4 p.m., just kind of wanting something to do that wasn't necessarily on a screen. And then I had remembered how much I loved art when I was younger, and just felt like I wanted to get back into it. And so it was great just picking it up, not knowing what would happen. And then a couple years later now, I just couldn't have even predicted just how much I love it. So,
yeah, that's fantastic. I'm so happy for you that you're doing it full time too. And I've got to say, everyone should check out your work. Please go to the show notes page. I do believe this episode is going to be vermonttalks.com/38. And I'll have a whole bunch of your pictures on that page. And it will redirect you to your website and everywhere else. But your style is very whimsical.
Yes.
And it almost reminds me of, I don't know if you've ever done any sort of illustration for like a children's book, but it's so pretty and cute that it feels like it should be in a children's book.
Thank you. Yeah, that's kind of the style I found that I just love. I love the animals. I actually painted landscapes for a long time. I just didn't branch out from landscapes. They were kind of my go-to for a long time. And then recently I just started loving animal paintings in watercolor and acrylic, but watercolor has more of that kind of whimsical feel to it. So
yeah, and watercolor is very hard, I must say.
It is.
That's one of those things you get into a little, and it's just to get everything to blend nicely and not muddy, I guess is the right word, because if you don't know color theory, it's really hard to get everything to mesh nicely. So you said you took some classes. Where did you take classes, and which ones did you recommend?
Yeah, so I took classes mostly online throughout that time. I did take one in-person class out in Colorado for a while, but that was really fun, just getting to learn some of the techniques, the color wheel, just some of those more formal aspects of painting. But I really loved Skillshare online for classes. Cool. And so I highly recommend that. That was a great place just to learn so much about the different materials that people use. There was so much that I found I learned just within the first 6 months of painting of the different types of paints. The tube watercolor paints became my favorite after using those for a while.
Cool.
Things like that, just really learning what's out there and how different papers can affect how the painting comes out. And really branching out with a lot of that as well. So I definitely recommend those classes. It's just incredible. They have levels from beginner to advanced artists, and just really helped kind of get a sense of all the things that are out there.
Yeah, very cool. I never really thought about Skillshare for something like that, so that's a really interesting recommendation. Do you have any specific people that you took a class from that you're like, oh, that was the best one?
I took such a range of classes. There were so many on there. I loved the folks that did painting challenges. And so you would actually do a painting every day for a month.
Oh, cool.
And so they hosted a class that was just every day they would have a different, usually landscape, sometimes botanicals that you could do for an entire month. And I love those because you would just see the progression from day 1 to day 30 of just the different skills that you learn. And they're just really small, like manageable paintings for kind of a busy weekday schedule. So
very cool. I love your flower paintings.
Oh, thank you.
You've got a really cool style. I enjoy your work, and everyone should go check it out. So you just said that the tube watercolors are your favorite. Do you have a specific brand that you love, or you could recommend, or different brands? You don't have to plug one.
Yeah, I love the Winsor and Newton Cotman watercolors. Those have kind of always been my favorite ones. I, for the longest time, was using pan watercolors, and I love those too, but the tubes, they're a little harder to travel with, especially if you go to places that have like altitude and things like that. But they are amazing for just getting more of that, the tones that are just a lot more vibrant. And then the thing I love about watercolor is you can put the paint on the palette and then reactivate it with water later.
Right.
So just so much paint that you can use, or keep a palette with you and not have to keep the tubes when you're traveling. But that's definitely been my favorite go-to brand that I've found so far. Yeah.
Oh, and what kind of paper do you end up liking to use? I've done a little bit of watercolor painting, and I did not love it the way that you do, clearly. So what kind of paper do you think is the best for you, at least?
Yeah, I found two. One of them that I think it's my favorite is the Strathmore 400 series. So it's kind of the best quality of that brand watercolor paper, but it's very affordable as well, which is really nice just to find like bigger sheets that you can kind of size down, or small sheets. I do a lot of smaller works. I recently have branched out into bigger works, but for a long time focused on kind of smaller paintings. And so that is an amazing resource for that. And then Arch's watercolor paper is a very, very fancy watercolor paper that I love as well. But those I usually save for kind of final works or bigger paintings.
Nice. Very cool. Do you have a specific technique that is your favorite watercolor technique? I've done some of what do they call it? It's like wet painting, where you wet the entire page and then everything bleeds.
Yeah. That's kind of my favorite one, I think, especially for animal portraits. So you kind of draw the outline and then you cover it in water, and then you just kind of drop the paint along different lines, and then you let it dry, which is the hardest part, is being patient enough to let it fully dry before starting the next layer. And that is probably my favorite, just because you never really know how the paint is going to go onto the paper. So it's always kind of this amazing things will happen with the painting that you weren't expecting, but you kind of end up loving. Like it doesn't turn out exactly how you think it will, but the paint kind of does its own thing. And that's probably why that particular technique is my favorite. But I do also really love just the blending of watercolors, especially for florals and just really that loose style.
Right. It looks so soft. Watercolors have that very particular, like acrylic is really pretty, but watercolors are they're so soft, and they almost feel like a pastel. It's not a pastel, but it has that vibrant, like vibrant, the opposite of vibrant, where everything's just floating together so nicely. I'm bad at describing what watercolors look like. Fluffy. They look fluffy.
Yes, they do.
Soft.
They do.
So you also do gouache and acrylic, and we were already discussing how much we love the word gouache.
Yes.
So gouache is hard to work with, right? I've heard this before, why do you prefer watercolor over gouache or acrylic?
Yeah, I would say I do love gouache. It's an interesting mix between watercolor and acrylic, so it's a little more buildable, which is one of the things I do really like about it. But I definitely gravitate towards watercolor just for the range of possibilities of paintings that you can make, different subjects and things like that. However, I will say recently I've been really getting into acrylic painting. It's been what I've been picking up for a couple of months, just kind of canvases and going into the acrylics. and doing a lot of like summery wildflower acrylic paintings, which has been really fun. But I think with the watercolor, just the softness of it and the whimsical nature, like we were talking about, is probably my favorite. But I'll often find myself going with watercolor and gouache mixed media. So kind of combining the two, the things I love about both of them.
That's cool. How do you would you do the watercolor first and then gouache after? Is that how that works? Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Kind of building on, oftentimes I'll do like buildings in gouache because it's really hard sometimes to get the watercolor to not blend into the background when you're adding something that should be kind of more forward in the painting.
Right.
So that's always was the hardest part for watercolors for me, was adding layers and getting that depth and not getting the paint to kind of all be on the same level.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you reactivate things. That's what I tend
Exactly.
to do that. I feel like that's something you must learn and get over as a beginner watercolor artist, is building, because I tend to put too much water and then all of a sudden I'm just redoing the entire background over and over again, and it's just not working the way I intended it to. So yeah, there's definitely a real skill set to being able to build on top and get more vibrancy from it instead of just the floaty, fuzzy softness that you do get with watercolors. So what inspires you to paint?
Yeah, I think I really love nature as inspiration. That's one of the things that I draw from the most, is flowers, animals, especially woodland animals tend to be what I paint the most. But recently I started doing more pet portrait type things as well, which I really love. But a lot of the inspiration just comes from really wanting to capture different seasons, especially in Vermont. Just such beautiful seasons all year round that I love to capture in painting. And that's where a lot of the inspiration came from for me, especially in those darker winter months, just wanting to capture some of the warmer scenery. And even I do love like mountain cabin type paintings as well, is really nice, cozy in the winter. But that's where a lot of the inspiration comes from for me.
Yeah, very cool. And it goes well with Vermont.
It does.
Like I thought that when I saw your fox, like, oh, this is very sweet and cute. It goes well with Vermont, especially if you're doing like cabin paintings in particular. So do you have any other hobbies that you're doing? I know you're making stickers. I kind of mentioned some of the things you're doing. So do you have anything else, or is it all paint based? Is everything with a brush?
Yeah, most things are paint based. I kind of started getting into ink and wash, drawing with watercolor washes, a lot of like the illustration type style. I love that so much. And so I'm trying to kind of expand my skill set with that. But I definitely, one of the goals I had for the year was to learn how to make my own art prints and things like that. Nice. And so that was kind of the other creative avenue that I took. And I have really been loving that. I think just having the balance between that creative aspect and really learning how to work with, that was a whole nother level of learning paper techniques and printing and printers and things like that. And so I balanced that with the painting, and that has been just such an incredible kind of combination for me of just creative avenues.
Yeah, very cool. And printing is so difficult.
It is.
Scanning, getting a good scan, like high quality, and keeping the colors right.
Yep.
And printers are the whole other side of that, right? Where this is not looking right in terms of color, and then you have to mess with everything.
Adjusting.
The digital world. And all of a sudden you're a photo editor. And
yep, exactly.
There's a lot to it.
There's so much, yeah.
Very cool. So, and you're selling the prints on your Etsy site along with the stickers. The stickers are
yeah.
so cute. I noticed the sticker on your water bottle. It's so cute. So what other hopes and dreams do you have for your studio space? Because you recently moved, right? So things are in flux, and you're really building this out. So what are your hopes and dreams? Yeah,
so I recently set up a much larger home studio, which has been one of the dreams of mine. I absolutely love it. Just having so much space dedicated to art, being very organized, having everything labeled. That was just an amazing opportunity for me. Get it all organized and put together. Having lots of natural light in there has been great as well. But I think eventually I would love to have kind of a separate outside of my house studio space that's kind of a gallery, has a lot of other things in it, and just a place for me to work as well. So that's probably kind of one of those 10-year goals, is just kind of having a home studio and then having somewhere outside of that to be able to grow my art. Yeah,
very cool. And obviously, the internet being what it is, and your social media account is super.
Thank you.
That's it. You're posting all these cute pictures all the time, which is where I found you, Alyssa. So people, I'm trying to keep my eyes out. You are actually the first artist I've had on the show who does visible art only, which I've been trying so hard to find people to talk to, and it's so hard to find. I don't know why exactly it's hard. I've got quite a few authors on the show. I've got musicians on the show, but for some reason it's hard to find people who want to talk about their visible art.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being the first visual artist on the show and actually coming on and talking to me. So tutorials. Oh yeah, you started doing tutorials. I totally forgot. I was going to ask you about this. Tell me about the tutorials you've been doing.
Yeah, so I kind of started painting time lapses and more kind of slow form videos on my Instagram, and I've really been loving that, trying to find the right balance of kind of the painting process. I've really been enjoying that. I think I got a lot of inspiration from the tutorials that I watched on my own when I was starting painting, and just really I love seeing how people start with a painting and then what it ends up looking like. Just that whole process is just so cool to watch, just the time lapse and everything. So I've really enjoyed that. I think eventually I might branch out more into like longer form videos with more explanations of the different techniques and everything that I'm working with. But for right now, I've just been loving making those kind of videos, or doing kind of a before and after of the initial drawing versus what it looks like in the end.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've actually done some time-lapse videos of making art before, and it's so much fun to do.
It's so fun.
You end up becoming, we were just talking about all the things you do when you're trying to print your art and scan your art, but when you start videoing your art, you become a photographer, a videographer.
Yeah.
You start doing video editing, all sorts of different things that go into that side of it. It's so rewarding, though, because you can actually watch it from start to finish. You're like, I did that.
Yeah.
I did all of that.
Exactly.
And it's so cool. Well, that's awesome for you that you've been doing the tutorials. Do you think you'd ever teach classes or sell online classes at some point on how to paint and just kind of branch into the like Skillshare world?
Yeah, I was considering that in the future, definitely. I think especially my goal for the past couple of years has been just to really branch out into all the different art styles that I see, just try so many different things. My main goal for this year was animal portraits, because those just seemed so different from landscapes. Those were my comfort zone, was landscape paintings. And so it's been so fun branching out into those. And so I think once I've kind of gathered all of those different subject matters that people paint, I would definitely be interested in kind of expanding into that.
Cool. Yeah, very cool. That's a great idea for you, because I think you've already got the general... You've got the skills with your video editing already and making time lapses. You've already got everything that you need to do that. And honestly, I don't think you need to get much better. I think people would love to learn how to paint the different things you've been painting, because they're so cute. The animals are so cute.
I love those. They're just so much fun.
Would you ever consider illustrating books if there was someone who is like, I really want whimsical animal paintings in my children's book? Would you be interested in doing something like that?
I've definitely considered that. I think, especially when I see a lot of those like ink and wash types or the loose watercolors, I've definitely considered projects like that, which is just a little bit more, especially when it builds upon like a story, just having paintings that build upon each other. That would just be so amazing. So I've definitely considered projects like that in the future.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I think you could do, honestly. I could see the fox. The fox himself.
The fox, yeah.
He could have his own whole story and saga, and he's super cute. So I could see it for sure. So, which one is your favorite painting that you've done so far?
I was thinking about this actually, and it changes often, just depending on what paintings I've done. But I will say the fox is definitely one of my favorites. I think I love how it came out. The colors blended in a way that I wasn't expecting, but I ended up loving.
It looks like a fuzzy fox. Like, yeah. It's so perfect the way that came out.
It brought the texture.
Does look like hair. It's amazing.
Yeah, I really loved that. It was definitely like one of the ones that I just really loved after I finished it. And recently I did a pet portrait of my dog as well. And that one I really loved after I finished that one too. Same reason, it kind of, the colors blended in a way that I ended up really loving. And then I would say for an acrylic painting, I really branched out and I challenged myself to do a 16-inch by 20-inch painting, which was probably, I want to say like 7 to 8 times larger than my typical painting. So it was a bit of a like challenge for me. It took me quite a few days, I think, of daily painting. It was probably 2 weeks to finish that one. But it was a bridge scene under cherry blossoms. And I just really loved how that one came out and was very nervous because I think sometimes with those bigger paintings, you just get really nervous about how the whole entire thing is going to look.
There's so much space. There's so much time you're putting into it. It's kind of a daunting.
It is.
Taking a giant canvas is daunting. It's one thing to like do a, where they splash the canvas or something. It's like, oh yeah, look, I've made an abstract painting and it's giant. It's not nearly as daunting as trying to make something detailed and
mapping it out, getting the scale correct and all of those things. And so when I finished that one, I was really excited and really ended up, that's what got me into acrylics recently was that painting, just really challenging myself for one of the first ones that I had done and just wanting to do more larger works now after kind of initially doing that one.
Very cool. Very cool. So tell us a little bit about some of these spaces. I know we talked about it at the very beginning, but you've got your work showing in a few different locations right now. So tell me what is where and what you're most excited about in terms of showing your work in different places.
Yeah, so right now I have a piece up in the Birds of Vermont Museum, and that show is actually going to be running until Halloween. So that is quite an amazing show of just local artists, and so that's up in Huntington, Vermont.
That's cool. So it's all I'm guessing it's all birds.
It is, yeah, cool. Bird themed and different mediums. People have done photography, painting, lots of different amazing mediums in that show. So I'm really excited for that show. And then I have often have pieces in Sparrow Art Supply as well. An amazing gallery in Middlebury.
Cool.
Really love Sparrow Art Supply, and so that is also one of my favorite places to get art supplies as well. And then I'm going to be doing Art Hop this year, which I'm very, very excited about in the fall. So I'll be doing that at the Space Gallery up in Burlington. And so I will have a space there that couple of days in September of this year.
Very cool.
And then right next to the Space Gallery is 30 Odd, which is an incredible store. And that's where I have a couple of my stickers, prints, and cards as well.
Very cool. Where is 30 Odd on Pine Street?
It is a little bit further down Pine Street, more towards downtown Burlington side.
Near the soda plant, maybe?
Yes, near the soda plant.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. I just didn't know where that was, and I drive down Pine Street all the time, so I wasn't sure. And do you know what SPACE stands for? Because that's going to bug me.
I don't actually.
No big deal, because I'm curious. Where is that? Is that right in downtown?
It's actually right behind 30 Odd. Yeah,
oh, well,
so it's right on by the soda plant.
Cool. On Pine Street.
On Pine Street.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. And the whole Art Hop. I'm trying to remember all the different things that go into the Art Hop, because the Art Hop's a huge deal. Isn't it a whole bunch of different businesses, and you can kind of make a day out of walking around and looking at things?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yep. You can walk around, and there's so many different art studios and galleries, and then also stores that participate as well for the whole weekend, and then lots of food and other opportunities. So
very cool.
I'm very excited.
So tell me a little bit more about yourself, Alyssa. Are you from Vermont originally? Who are you? Where are you from?
I'm from Colorado originally, but have lived in Vermont for quite a while. Came out here a lot in the summertime, have a lot of family from here, and most of my family lives here now. So I've been here full time for quite some time. Really loving it. I love all of the weather here. The art community here is absolutely amazing. And that has just been incredible as I've gone from kind of painting in my home studio to showing more of my work and really getting to know other artists in the community. That has just been an incredible opportunity for me that I've really loved about being here. And I have a 7-year-old dog named Oliver who is often in my paintings. He's a red bone hound, and so he's definitely frequently in a lot of mine.
He has long ears.
He does, yeah.
They're so cute.
They're
cute. Almost like, are they wrinkly or do they just look wrinkly?
Very wrinkly.
Wrinkly, long ears. So cute. They look sad, but not.
Yeah.
Not really.
Exactly. So sweet.
So please plug all your social medias, plug your website, plug everywhere that anyone might possibly want to find you.
Yeah, so I have an Instagram account at the Happy Here and Now Studio. That's where I post most often. I try to do a lot of stories on there and video content as well. And then I also have my website, which is thehappyherenow.com. And that has a link to my Etsy store, and then also has a lot of the paintings that I've done, ranging from a couple of years ago to kind of present in a gallery space on my website as well. And then I also included in the show notes a couple of links to websites for the places that I have a couple of my pieces here locally in Vermont.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely all of those will be on the show notes page. That's vermonttalks.com/38 for this episode. And we'll have all of those links and also the links to the studios that you're showing your space, the Birds of Vermont Museum, Sparrow Art Supply, Space Gallery, but that's not until the end of September, you said?
I think it's the 8th, 9th, and 10th of September.
Yeah, got it. And 30 odd on Pine Street. So we're going to link to your Etsy, all of those places. Everything will be linked. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
This has been fun. So I'm excited for you. I hope you do great with your studio. All right, have a good day. Thanks so much for listening to the end of the show. Subscribe to Vermont Talks on your favorite podcasting platform. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, all over the web. Contact Becca at vermonttalks.com if you'd like to be interviewed or if you know someone who should be. Thanks so much to Jason Baker for creating the show music. The views and opinions expressed by the guests are those of the individuals and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Vermont Talks. Any content or statements provided by our guests are of their opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, anyone, or anything. And that's what was new in the 802. Have a great day.